I'm all like this, for those of them wey say they doubt everything wey Peter Obi and Labour Party legal team do during the tribunal so far, just watch this video here and see some of the things wey Labour Party use to prove say Peter Obi win the election, and some of the possible outcome and verdict wey the judges go likely give concerning this tribunal matter. So as you dey watch this video, I like make you also comment your opinion, still share am, make other people comment their opinion on how they reason this matter. So wanna watch the video first.
If you're one of those genuinely thinking that Labour Party didn't bring evidence that they won the election to the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal, then you must have missed it. In many episodes of the hearing that we covered, Labour Party brought massive evidence to court. Let's take them one by one. Labour Party tendered certified true copies of Forms EC8As from INEC. These are hard copies that INEC claimed they fell back on. They had to do manual collation since they didn't do upload at the polling unit. Although INEC didn't supply all the copies requested by the Labour Party despite being under subpoena, but at least they tendered the ones they got from INEC. So that's number one. The second batch of documents are the IRF copies certified by INEC. All the uploads on IRF, including the more than 18,000 polling unit results that are blurred and unreadable. No matter the reason that INEC is giving that prevented them from using IRF copies to do collation, IRF is still recognized by the electoral law. So that is why Labour Party submitted IRF copies. IRF copies should be the same as hard copies. When you pick one polling unit result in a particular area and search for it on the IRF, the result should be exactly the same thing because that result was snapped at the polling unit and uploaded. The third evidence that they submitted to prove that they won the election is the Beavers Report. What is the importance of the Beavers Report? Beavers Report will show overvoting. Beavers machines are used to accredit the voters before they are able to vote. So if the number of voters in a particular polling unit are more than the number of accredited voters, it is simply overvoting. What does the law say in case of overvoting? What should happen? It says that in places where overvoting occurred, that results there must be cancelled. So expect the tribunal to cancel many results in places where they detect overvoting. Like we already analyzed in some videos where we showed overvoting in states like Rivers, Kogi, Plateau, and many others, the APC benefited more than other parties in the places we analyzed. So when those votes are cancelled, they will suffer heavily. They will lose many votes, which might lead to their not making 25% in those states. Yes, when the votes are recalculated after the cancellations, their scores might not be up to the required 25% in many of these states. The fourth evidence that they submitted to prove that they won the election is the statement by one of their witnesses, the professor of mathematics, who made all the calculations and tabulated all their figures and arrived at the fact that Peter Obi won the election. His statement and analysis and tabulation of the results were tendered to the court. They have the information. It is not the fault of the Labour Party that the defendants did not bring any witness to counter what they tendered. Because normally if someone is making an accusation, made an accusation against you, and you people end up in court, you are supposed to come to court and say, hey, I didn't do what this guy is accusing me of. I'm innocent. You just lay down everything, tell your story, and be proved right. But in this case, INEC didn't do anything. They just called one witness against Labour Party. Tinubu's council called only one witness. APC didn't call any witness. So it is not the fault of the Labour Party that the figures are not known as at now. Granted that the figures that INEC announced has been taken as the official position, but it doesn't negate the fact that the election was rigged, that the process leading to the announcement was in gross violation of the electoral law and their own guidelines. They feel because of that they don't need to defend anything, that they don't even need to submit documents that are required from them, that the burden of proof lies with the petitioner, despite the petitioner serving them subpoena from the same tribunal to tender the documents so that they can prove their case. So it's a mix of many things, impunity and taking advantage of the law. Now, having seen all the evidence that they submitted to prove that Labour Party actually won the presidential election, many might still be thinking, why didn't Labour Party submit their political party copies of the presidential election results? That if they truly have them and it was from there that they calculated the results, why didn't they submit it? Like you already know, the political party copies are the third on the ladder when you're talking about presenting evidence about the election. So that was why they relied on INEC CTCs, although not complete, but the tribunal judges will get a picture of where they are coming from. Now the question arises, where will this evidence lead to? Will the judges just close their eyes and agree with Labour Party based on the statement of the professor that they won the election, without the Labour Party tendering their party agent copies to back up the calculation made by the professor? Will they just allow the results and say, yes, you are the winner, go? It's not straightforward, but let's look at the Beavers Report. If the judges are able to verify the Beavers Report from INEC themselves, that means overvoting will be proved. They will now cancel the elections in places where there was overvoting. After cancellation, what next? Because when you cancel elections in many places, it will affect the number of votes of the candidates. So definitely many people will lose votes. Like already said, APC will lose more votes than others. So this will affect their total number of votes. What will happen in this case? Definitely the judges will order a recollation of the results. They will invite INEC to come to court and recollate the results. If that is the decision, which results will INEC rely on to recollate the results to find out the actual winner of the presidential election? Before we find out which results they will use, let's see the impact of the more than 18,000 blood results on IRF. The impact is very huge. Let's assume that 100 persons will vote in one polling unit, and there are more than 18,000 polling units. That's approaching 2 million votes alone. Not that all of them will vote for one candidate, but it's a huge figure. It is very significant, which might be higher than the margin between the first and second after the recollation of the figures. And in that situation, it means the election will be declared inconclusive, which ultimately means that elections will be held in these polling units to determine a winner. They might even include places where elections were cancelled so as to determine a winner. So in terms of determining who won the presidential election at the Presidential Election Tribunal, it seems that the judges will arrive at 3 conclusions, or maybe 4. But before we go through all of them, let's see which presidential election results that INEC will use to recalculate the votes in case a recollation is ordered by the court. All parties have closed their case, so there's no more room to admit or tender evidence. So that stage has passed. The court will rely on all the evidence before them, the IRF copies and the hard copies tendered by the Labour Party. And since they are the same thing, they will just use the IRF copies to do the collation. In places where they are not available, they will default to the hard copies. So INEC will recollate the results to determine a winner. If they are not able to arrive at a winner, that means there will be a runoff election. Now, let's look at the 4 conclusions the Honorable Justices at the Appeal Court may arrive at after looking at the evidence. 1 is outright cancellation. Just like we analyzed in the other video that going by the evidence before the court, Labour Party and PDP have proved serious non-compliance with the law. And going by the law, the non-compliance substantially affected the outcome of the election. That's number 1. Number 2, order a recollation of the results. The judges might arrive at this after cancelling all the places where there were overvoting. It's a serious possibility. That's number 2. Number 3, declare P2B winner of the presidential election. Number 4, conclude that the petitioners couldn't prove their case. Yes, that's the worst case scenario. All the documents are not complete, all the CTCs are not complete, but they know why they chose to go this way. The expertise of the lawyers in P2B's legal team are not in question. They have a lot of experience. So these are the likely outcomes that the judges will arrive at when determining who won the presidential election. This is still different from all the other pleas like disqualification, all the other pleas in their petition. Now, we hope that this will put to rest the insinuation or people questioning why they didn't prove or tender evidence that they won the election. Keep asking your questions. We'll try to answer them in subsequent videos. Thanks for watching.